Welcome, everyone, to the September 17th meeting of Economic Matters. Here in the chamber is myself and Alderman Savage. Can I first get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
I will second. All in favor? Aye. Up next, can I get an approval of our July 16th minutes?
So moved.
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Up first, 3225, lease of city property. 3225, lease of city property, 2031 to 2036 fall boat shows. Do you have anyone from the staff?
Actually, I think we have 3 people here from Boat Show. Come on up, Mary.
Come on up.
Take our assigned seats.
Yep.
All right. Just like we were just.
All right, welcome. Wouldn't mind introducing yourselves for the record and testifying a little bit to 3225.
Matt Flinner, Director of Central Services.
Ashley Leonard, Assistant City Attorney.
Mary Ewenson, President, United States Yacht Shows.
Would you like to give the overview?
Sure, I can give an overview. This particular one, 3225, is for the 2031 through 2036 fall boat shows. It's a brand new lease that will take over when the current lease expires. It is substantially similar to the lease that's currently in place. However, we have attempted to rework it to make it more readable, more manageable, and to address various issues that have come up over the last 5+ years that we've worked out informal solutions for, and we're sort of more formalizing those solutions, so to speak. The rent is staying the same format, the same setup, which is a minimum base amount that is escalated annually, or a certain percentage of gross revenues. None of that has changed. City fees are still incorporated in here and still being escalated annually. The premises is generally the same, but we have allowed flexibility and language in here to adjust things like move-in, move-out dates, reducing the premises by either party, shifting the premises, just to acknowledge the fact that we are going through a significant amount of construction in the leased premises area. And at this point, we're not sure how that will all shake out. So we did add some flexible language in there to adjust this post-construction.
So, city dock construction, I certainly hope will be completed by 2031.
Yes. I mean, that's the hope. But since we are putting this up now, and since that's still a work in progress, that could have change orders and shifts, we have to allow for some flexibility that will be adjusted
Okay.
as we go.
All right. Alderman Savage, do you have any questions on this?
All right. So this, in total, if it's renewed,
It would go through the end of 2040. So it would go through the 2040 boat show.
okay. And that's 3 additional 5-year terms.
No. So this one, it goes.
I'm looking at.
So the initial term will be for 1 year for 2031. Then it's 5 additional 1-year terms, and then there's I think that's. And then there's also the extension period on top of that, which is an additional 4 years. So you have an initial term of 1 year, 5 1-year renewal terms, and then an optional extension period for an additional 4 years that would operate as 4 individual renewals.
Okay.
Essentially 10 years total, broken down by individual years.
Okay.
And this would operate more on most of our leases are supposed to go on a fiscal year, but the way the boat shows operate, that's not practical. So these are on a calendar year, just the way that they're set up and they operate.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard any concerns about these leases over the past 8 years. Been doing this.
Yeah, I mean,
it sounds-
honestly, this was just a good chance to do a cleanup. We moved a lot of the things that shift, like the dates got moved to an exhibit because both parties are allowed to shift them. We're doing more exhibits to show more of the lease spaces more clearly.
Mhm.
We have, like I said, we've added in a little bit clearer language about how move-in and move-out dates, because that could be impacted by construction depending on what the final construction is, could shift how move-in, move-out operations would have to work. We've expanded the force majeure to deal with things like depending on how parking management shifts, how construction shifts, all those sorts of things. But otherwise, it's mostly the same arrangement.
Okay. Do we have any summary on some of the estimated economic benefit that the boat show brings?
I do not, other than I know they don't pay the minimum payment generally. Generally, they're paying the 50%.
Yeah. So, excuse me. Our ticket, the payment of the rent is based on 50% of the ticket sales after the admissions and amusement tax. So 10% comes right off the top, goes to admission and amusement tax, and then 50% of that goes to the city. And I can tell you, and then there are some fees that get backed out of that, which are all in the lease. But I did get the numbers in case you guys asked. Last year for the fall, our fall check to the city after fees were removed was $529,365 for the 3 weeks that we're at City Dock. And it's going to come up next is the spring lease. And that was $36,196.59. And beyond that, there are obviously we fill all the hotel rooms,
Yeah.
the restaurants, everybody that is in the marine industry benefits greatly.
Mhm.
There are huge multi-million-dollar estimates, but I have to say that the last study was done several years ago, so we don't have a great estimate. But I've heard as high as $50 million. I'd rather see a proper study before quoting that as gospel.
Okay. Well, thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Nor I. The boat shows have always been a very good partner to the city and very fun draw for guests and visitors and residents alike. So, hearing no further questions, can I get a motion for a favorable recommendation on 03225?
So moved.
I will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Up next,
Or do
033.
you want to do 036 at the same time?
Yeah, you know what? Let's go ahead and adjust it and do 03625. We'll do an on-the-fly adjustment of the agenda. So we're going to go ahead and do 03625, lease of city property 2031 to 2036 spring boat shows. For folks who are following along, 03325, lease of city property Market House will now be after this. Spring boat show. Same thing?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. They're fairly, there's a few adjustments between the two leases because the nature of the spring boat show, but from a material legal standpoint, they're basically the same lease with slightly adjusted dates and premises area. But otherwise, we try to keep these as close to possible to one another. So yeah,
Yeah.
And otherwise not any big changes.
Alderman Savage?
And no questions.
All
Chair.
right. All those in favor? Can I get a favorable recommendation?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And up, last but certainly not least, 03325, lease of city property, Market House.
Market House.
1 second. Okay. All right. So, the Market House lease, we started with the current lease that is in effect through June 30th of 2033 as sort of the basis of this one. This one, it would be for there are some changes. So the term in this case would be for a 5-year initial term, along with 3 possible renewal terms of 5 years each that the tenant can unilaterally exercise unless they're in default. What we did remove is we took out any ability to extend that the current lease has. The current lease has an ability to extend upon mutual agreement, sort of an unlimited number of extensions. We removed that and capped this at a set initial term and a number of renewal terms with no additional extension beyond that amount. For rent, the base rent was increased from $8,000 to $10,000. It has a 5% increase for each renewal term. So that would be every 5 years, not every year. And it has performance rent of 1% of cumulative annual gross revenues over 1.5 million, which was a decrease from the current one of 2% of cumulative annual gross revenues over 1.5 million. That does not have an escalator. It is a net zero lease, still maintaining a net zero, which means they're doing exclusive control. They're covering all the utilities and a majority of the repairs and maintenance, except for certain external repairs that, due to the historic nature of the building and the envelope, we handle. We did add in some new language that basically indicated that if the tenant was willing to undertake some of the city's maintenance obligations, as in coordinate the bids, coordinate the contractors, and pay for them, that they could use that as a set-off to rent rather than us having to undertake sort of those obligations. And we tightened up the subleasing a little bit, tightened it up and also give it some flexibility. They are allowed to sublease portions of the Market House with our prior written approval, and they provide us copies of the subleases. There's also language in there that allows them to set up sort of a set area where they can have like a rotating sort of pop-up scenario tenant. They are responsible as the primary tenant for making sure their subtenant complies with the lease and all applicable laws and permits and everything else. And we do have, like I said, approval of that. So that's sort of the other one, which you had mentioned, is they requested a slight change in the financial documentation that they can provide related to their performance rent. The current lease requests a very specific type of audit, which requires a special type of accountant, and which is an extra cost to the tenant. They've asked for a little bit more flexibility in the type of financial documents they can provide to us, which we have. We still have approval rights, and if we need additional financial information, we are allowed to request that. But it's just giving them a little bit more flexibility so they don't have to spend extra money on, additional financial paperwork that and there were no objections as far as I know from our finance department. This did go before the finance committee this morning, and they did have 3 amendment requests. I don't know if you wanted to know what those were.
What do you think?
Yes, if you please get into requests.
Okay, so these were from Alderman Huntley. He was asking for the renewals, instead of being at the tenant's unilateral discretion, for them to be more mutual agreement renewals. He asked for either the base rent amount of 10% to be increased, or he wanted an increase in the percentage rent, the performance rent percentage, one or the other. And he wanted a higher escalator on both the base rent and the performance rent baseline that was tied to inflation.
Rent escalator based on inflation.
Yeah. So those are what he has asked us to look into and take back to the tenant for further negotiation. But that happened today, so I don't have,
I have a question regarding the accounting. What was the original type of accounting that
Let me see.
we were wanting, and what is the more simplified version that we decided that we were going with?
Okay, let me see. I did print it all out, but it's all right. I think it was a specific. Don't know if I brought. I thought I brought it with me, but hold on. It was a very specific type of audit document, and I don't remember exactly what it's called. It was something that former finance director Dickinson had put in.
Yeah, I'm not sure that she added that because she was an advocate for giving them more flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, it might have.
She didn't find so, and I don't remember. It was like a cumulative report.
Yes.
But what it didn't do was like if they were to submit standard audited financials to us, that's not what that report was. It was more specific than that. But sort of standard financials is fine for our purposes. And so Director Dickinson had been an advocate for, rather than this very specific report that she didn't feel gave the city any additional assurances, we should be fine with standard financial reports. And so giving them a little bit more flexibility to do that, given that the city still retains the ability to ask additional information if we feel that's necessary. But they should be able to start with sort of standard reports.
Is this the difference between, and I'm kind of using a very clumsy metaphor here, is this kind of similar between if we go out for dinner and get an itemized receipt versus the general receipt? They both show we spent $100 on a night out, but one shows I spent $50 on this item, $40 on this item, and $10 on that, versus the total bill that just says 100.
I mean, I can read you what the new proposed language is, if that would help. I mean, I think it was. I'm not an accountant, and I don't audit auditing, but now they have to, and it just relates to the performance rent. Such supporting tax return documentation as the city reasonably shall require to document gross sales by tenant and any subtenants, and the computation of the payment. And tenant shall implement procedures reasonably satisfactory to the city to ensure timely and proper recording and counting of all sales by tenant and subtenant. So that's what we're requesting now. We basically just need this documentation to be able to determine what they would owe for performance rent. And we ran this specific language by both our current finance director and the former finance director who's still under contract. And they said, this is what they would be looking for to be able to justify the performance rent. And I can follow up with you. I thought I had printed it out, but I don't see the original language, which was negotiated a while ago, but I don't.
And I'll share, the overall intention was they were going out and incurring extra costs on their behalf just to provide us with a financial report. And so we were trying to find a way where they could use the reports they already use for tax returns, their balance sheet that their accountants provide them, finding those types of documents that then we could use those without having them have to go out, contract the services of an auditor or an accountant to create the specialized report.
Okay.
So those were the big changes. Otherwise, the lease is fairly similar, like I said, to the one currently in place. We did update the exhibits just to show, because when the original lease had the sort of the concept art, so the new exhibits have the existing floor plan, which I forgot to mention in finance, but so we did have them update things because a lot of the stuff in the original lease was like the original concept submittals that they had submitted. So we sort of updated stuff that was no longer concept to actual operations. And I think those are the big changes.
Now, with the subleases, are the subleases considered part of the revenues generated by the leasees, considered part of the total revenue generated by
Correct,
the
yes.
tenant as well?
Yes.
Alderman Savage, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, first question would be, so what's the deadline for the current lease?
The current lease has been mutually approved and extended through June 30th of 2033.
It's been
Yes. So
extended.
yeah, the current lease allowed for extensions as requested by the tenant and approved by the city administration in 5-year intervals, and so they've done that.
Okay. So 2033. And so just for the public record then, the administration is looking to authorize this, because this would be, extending it out to
It'd be
potentially additional 28 years?
20 years total, correct, yes.
20 years or 28?
20. 20 years from when the current one expires June 30th, 2033. So it would go through June 30th of 2053 in theory.
And so what's the rationale for, because we'd be locking it in for, you said 20 years from that point. So
Yeah.
it's actually 25 years or so from today.
The rationale, 20 years was what the tenants had requested. A lot of it has to do with they plan to do from my understanding, a lot of improvements to the building and to the infrastructure. And in order to get financing and loans for things of those nature, banks look for leases of a longer length of time that sort of can cover the financing term.
Okay.
There's a bathroom specifically
Yeah.
as one of the big ones.
Yes, the bathroom. I mean, I think bathroom has been noted. Potentially some of the
geothermal system has come up.
system potentially. The Market House does need some love, so it's going to need some additional repairs, or not repairs, but upgrades and maintenance go. And if the tenant is going to invest in that, they want to be able to have sufficient time in there to recoup.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense to me. This is very much a public asset, and we want it to be successful and improved. And I think just for the public's sake, I mean, I think we've done 30-year leases with with the Maritime Museum
And Crab.
right?
Both have
for
with
$1 a year.
similar setups in that they get very long term because they've committed to expending money to do maintenance and repairs and overhauls to our property that honestly at the end the city gets to own the upgrades.
And they've certainly done that in both cases. But how is that handled in those leases? How is it built in? Those improvements, how are those committed in the leases?
The Maritime Museum at Back Creek Park and Crab do not pay rent. So they don't pay any rent. So they have to, in exchange for no monetary rent, they have to provide in-kind improvements at set amounts over a certain amount of time. The difference with that is that Crab was rebuilding from scratch, essentially. And the Maritime Museum was taking a completely unused, sort of minimally maintained building and bringing that up. So they both had a substantial amount of money they had to invest over a certain period of time.
Or is that documented in the lease itself,
Yes,
or an attachment? Or?
Yeah, that the amounts they had to expend was documented. Either the amount and or what they approved repairs. So I believe for Crab, the actual permit plans for what they built out there were built into the lease.
Because I guess what I'm getting at with this sounds like potentially similar to what Alderman Huntley was bringing up, but is to have, because right now the renewals are basically automatic. It sounds like unless they're in default.
Correct, unless they're in default or the tenant doesn't wish to proceed.
Yeah. So we're essentially would be locking it in with them for 25 years from today, or passage. Which again, I think they've been successful. I want to keep them in there, but I'm just wondering if we should somehow link, instead of the automatic renewals, have be more based on like a performance-based renewal that somehow takes into consideration some of these other improvements. Because unless is there something in there that really lists or ties some of the infrastructure improvements that we're looking for?
Not like Crab or Maritime Museum. They do have requirements to generally keep the condition of the property. They have to do all, pretty much like I said, all maintenance and a lot of the repairs, but there's nothing that requires them to do additional upgrades per se. Or
maybe tying it with the rent increases, because right now it's only 5% per term, which means that's not even keeping pace with inflation, right? That 5% over 5 years.
Yeah, 5% over 5 years.
So maybe another way perhaps would be to link that increase to some performance standards, as far as if you make investments in infrastructure. Because right now, I believe the way it's worded is we handle most of the infrastructure, as far as like roof repair and the geothermal you mentioned. I don't remember what it said about bathroom, but
bathroom is on them.
Okay. But still, even if it's on them in the lease, I think having it tied to performance would help provide an incentive to them to actually do it, right? If that's going to be a consideration. So I don't know the best way. I think you know.
I have similar language to that in the Maritime Museum lease.
Okay.
Or something along those lines. It's been a while since I looked at that one directly, but something along those lines that I could propose to the tenant for their consideration.
Okay. Definitely would like to get your thoughts on that. And then, and also working into some of those performance metrics, if they have, because I know in the lease, I believe we have like a what do you call it? Reserve the right to have them present to the council every
Correct.
year.
Yes.
If we request it. And so that'd be a good opportunity to get some updates from them on some of the other aspects of the market house, which would be, providing local sourcing, community events, hours of operation, just to make sure they're having adequate hours and days of operation. I don't know what else. The code speaks to wanting to make sure that they preserve the historic nature of the market house. And
it also has a Maryland Historical Trust easement on it.
Right.
So
yeah.
they are, the structure itself already has, between the city's historical regulations, it also has Maryland Historical Trust regulations on it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So did you understand where I'm going with that, as far as some of the performance?
I think so. I can try to come up with something and see what the tenants would be open to and come back with you. And that's what I was sitting here looking for. Paragraph 26, I could slightly update to include more specifics. That's the city council meeting or work session, to maybe list more specifics like you were just discussing that you want reported back to you guys.
Yeah. And then one of the other metrics could be, I'd have to look at how you worded it elsewhere, or it's worded in the code, but offering, what do you call it? Like kind of like retail food. I know that they've done that in the past, but it hasn't been incredibly successful. But I think it is enlisted in the code.
Yes, I believe they still do have a section in the space. The code doesn't require a certain amount.
Right.
It's just sort of a But I do believe that there is.
I think the terminology they use is they have grab and go offerings
Right.
for
Yeah.
locals.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think it's really defined in the code what that means. But okay, yeah. So if we could tie in some of the performance-based renewal or rent triggers, that'd be good. I don't know if you concur, Mr. Chair, or not.
Yeah, I just have one other question on the performance rent. Why did we decrease from 1.5 to 1%?
Well, we decreased from 2% to 1%. We kept the base amount at 1.5 million. So we didn't change the 1.5 million is the same in both. It would change the percentage. It was a request by the tenant based on operational and financial requests from them. Just based on how things, they proposed this at the beginning, sort of many years ago, and they think after being in there for a while that the 1% is more financially viable and appropriate at this point.
Mm-hmm.
During the finance committee, Director Moran had shared that certainly for the first, given what we got for FY25, the city actually would have gotten slightly more rent under the new arrangement. So the performance rent would have gone down, I think she said 20,000, but the base rent would have gone up by 24. So not huge numbers either way. But I think they're looking at sort of the long term. But in the short term, it didn't sound like that was a huge change for the city in terms of how much we.
So with the increase in base rent, it still comes up net gain.
At least in the short term, that was what Director Moran had shared during the finance committee.
So I have no further questions. Alderman Savage, do you have any more?
So going to the rent structure a little more. I'm sorry, before I get to the rent structure, are there sufficient out clauses if some concern were to pop up? That I think I said earlier, I think the only one that I saw was if they're in default, but can you tie something to some of the performance standards? So if they do miss some of the performance standards, then
I mean, in theory, I mean, so you're talking about shifting the how much performance rent they pay based on what they accomplish? Is that what we're...
Is there a way to terminate the lease if they do not meet the standards or if they no longer become a good tenant?
Yeah, I mean, there's default for various reasons. There wouldn't be, I mean, we would have to restructure that. So if we're doing like performance-based metrics, that would have to be sort of woven in as a requirement, and then it could become a default reason. But I would have to, I would have to do some new language to get that in there, because right now their requirements are just, to maintain and keep it in good repair. But if you're asking them to do specific types of upgrades or repair, that is not in there. So if they didn't do those right now, it wouldn't be a default. I'd have to add language to say you're required to do these in order to do that, or if not, we have the option to terminate.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would like them a little more closely tied, because if we are going to commit to giving this, essentially allowing them to continue to operate Mark House for 25 years, I feel like, what they are giving back, I don't want to, not give them enough credit. They are giving us a well-performing and asset downtown with the Market House as it is. But I think it'd be good to just, again,
Do you
give them
want
a little
it
more incentive.
To tie it to all of the renewals, or like the second renewal, the third renewal, like, or does each renewal have sort of a requirement, I guess?
I mean, I don't have anything specific in mind.
Okay.
I mean, if you have recommendations on what would be a good way to structure it, I'm certainly
Just
open
because,
to-
I mean, it's you're trying to figure out how much you can accomplish, for instance, in the first 5 years.
Right.
So, like, if the first renewal comes up in 5 years, realistically, given how many restrictions they have on it from a historic perspective, how much
Yeah.
can they accomplish in
I mean,
5
I'd say
years.
priority would be restrooms. Probably one of the first, but I mean, it may come to central services as far as what you feel like needs to get or should get improved first.
Well, and on the physical improvements to the structure, their feedback to us is that the city doesn't always move fast.
Yeah.
And so this was something we had negotiated, that we had compromised. We're like, hey, instead of having us get the approval to launch a new CIP project, to review this, and then do another CIP project to complete it, we're like, we could just do this in 3 months. And so we didn't want to stop that progress. And that's why we added those terms in. But they are on us all the time about the restrooms, the doors, and their access points are a problem, their trash can storage in the back, the geothermal system and their AC capacity. All of those things are impacting their operations, and they want to get in and fix those right away.
Yeah, and I don't want to necessarily tie their hands unless we feel like there's something we want them to prioritize. But if we give ourselves some ability to, then they'll be able to, they'll realize they need to come to us when time for the renewal and make the case that here's some of the improvements we've made to support their ask. But I guess to work in some kind of ability for us to adjust that as needed. Like if there's some other infrastructure need that pops up that we want to incentivize them to do on their own, perhaps, then maybe have that ability worked into the lease.
I will take a look at that and sort of wrap that into the finance committees with mutual renewals, which is kind of sort of getting the same place, which is that we don't want the renewals to be completely unilateral.
Yeah. And let's see. The rent structure. So I guess I already discussed the 5% issue. And yeah, because what I had written down was tying them into CPI.
Yes, which was the finance.
That's what finance said.
Finance had asked for some sort of CPI or other inflation method to tie them in better.
Or increase the frequency of escalations. I guess you already talked about the finance issue earlier. Some other questions I had. I'm almost done. The business summary. Did you say that was updated for this lease?
I believe it was updated a little bit, not substantially, if I remember correctly, but there was a little bit of update. I know the drawings in particular got updated. Because when they took over the Market House, it was basically an empty shell on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So the drawings for sure have been updated. And I think the business summary might have gotten a light touch, but substantially the same, I believe.
The one idea kind of related to this is wondering if we should bake in some kind of community engagement or like basically an annual, and I know this may not be appropriate for the lease, let me know, but some kind of like annual public hearing that would be offered by the city, or perhaps like requiring the Market House folks to do an annual, customer feedback survey where we can at least just get some comments from the public as far as what the residents' needs are, what their observations are of how things are working. Because it's meant to be public house in many ways.
I mean, that could be part of their annual reporting.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah.
That could be worked into the paragraph 26 sort of as a...
Okay. And then and I don't know how much of if they're worried about this at all. It sounds like they're not. If they want to commit to this long, I mean, are we worried about any kind of change in the market that may pop up over the next 15, 20 years that would necessitate a different direction?
I'm trying to think. We do have. Let's see. Oh, we have. I don't know if we have a true market change. I know in the boat shows does, but I don't think they had requested sort of a economic force majeure language.
I mean, if they think it's going to be viable, I'm good with that.
I mean, there's nothing saying they can't change their menu or concept.
Yeah.
If pizza no longer sells, there's nothing saying they can't switch to banh mi's.
Yeah. Well, can they swap out their business, what was it called, the business summary, if they needed to?
To some extent, as long as they're complying with all the requirements. And we've also given them a little bit more flexibility. They had, with our approval, they had toyed around with maybe dedicating, and this would be upon mutual agreement, dedicating a certain portion of the market house sort of as a pop-up area that would allow sort of like rotating subtenants. So one comes in and it does well for a while and then it sort of fades. They could sort of rotate that through in like that set space.
And the concept that they put at the end of the lease is pretty vague to allow flexibility for the business. It's just standard. Offer made-to-order food or fresh prepared food, beer, wine, and retail items for on-site consumption or takeout.
Okay. Well, that's all I had.
So my last question on this is, did finance make any recommendation on this, or are they waiting for the results of their proposed amendments, or?
I mean, Vicky can probably.
The latter.
Yeah, they didn't take an action. They will bring this back at their next meeting to find out how those discussions went.
I would also like to do that. I am not comfortable taking any type of action at this time until we hear back with the negotiations. I especially find the tying rent to inflation a very reasonable request on our part. They are a very good partner. I am a big fan of sticking with this group because they made it work. We don't punish people who make something work, but we also got to make sure that we get a good deal for the city too. So can I please get a motion to postpone action until our October meeting?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you at our October meeting, and hopefully we have a finalized negotiated contract, and then we can knock it out.
I will do my best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, ID 2325. We got a new economic development director,
Oh, we do.
but he's not here, and he was supposed to be here to introduce himself. That's disappointing.
You didn't know? Oh.
He said he was coming. Well, he said it to me, but
So he didn't get the official calendar invitation,
well,
maybe.
let's extend a formal invitation to our new economic development director and have him come and introduce himself and present his goals to the city for our next meeting. I think that would be very beneficial to the committee and to the city, even if it will be our last economic matters meeting as a team.
And Mr. Chair, if we can also point out related to that, right, we do have holidays coming up. Our last meeting is going to be October.
Yeah.
Last year I think we were trying to push some changes to the Midnight Madness,
Oh, yeah.
improve pedestrianization. And I'll give you an update for you on that after the meeting, but just wanted to put the bug in your ear about that.
Let's try to get that soon off the ground. And since our last meeting will be close to Halloween, costumes are optional. All right. Do we have anything else for the good of the order?
No, sir.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I shall second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.